Hi, everybody. It's Friday. It's true. It's the community gathering. Yep, we're here again. I think it's 94th consecutive week, something like that. I've been doing it since April 17th, 2020. Response, originally, it was a response to COVID and shutdown and a desperate ploy to find a way of dealing with being in a pandemic and still having community. Didn't expect it to take off quite as it has. I'm very proud and very pleased and honored that so many people join us every week. Um, so originally we talked about being creative in shutdown, and we talked about the challenges of COVID. Um, I I do want to start off by saying that as excited as we all have been about the possibility of leaving a pandemic and maybe going out and having something resembling the lives we used to live 2 years ago, the incidents of the last week have really uh, taken their toll on most of us emotionally. We are in a world war, which is words I never thought I was going to speak in my lifetime. And I just want to acknowledge it. I want to say that we're all there. We're all praying for Ukraine. We're all putting as much heart and love and good thoughts out as we possibly can for healing of not only Russia and the Ukraine, but of the entire world. It's Russia is basically a symptom of something that happens to the human race every now and then, all throughout history. Um, Leave that all behind, and we're going to just go forward now into the future with a conversation that is very much about the future. Um, I want to introduce you to Eric Roffman, who is going to be our guest today, and he is just an expert on all things dealing with extended reality. And I want to say hello to you, Eric. And I also want to start off by asking you whether you can disambiguate the word virtual for everyone, so that we understand that there's a difference between what you're talking about with virtual reality and what we talk about with virtual presentation and virtual performance. But first, tell us about yourself. Take yourself off mute. Remember, I muted everybody.
Yes, you can hear me now.
I can hear you now. Absolutely.
Good. So I'm Eric Roffman. I have a long history doing a lot of different things. I call myself a professional eclecticist. I started off in high school and college doing politics. I actually helped, I was the chairman of the platform committee for the I won't tell you which year, but you can guess. Young Democratic convention, working with Barney Frank when he was a congressman. Before he was a congressman, when he was at Harvard. And I worked on Kennedy's campaign, and I worked on, even before that, I worked on Adlai Stevenson's campaign, who was in all respects the best public speaker I have ever heard. I went to one of his rallies.
So you're just a fraction older than me, because I remember Adlai Stevenson. We may be the only two people in the room who remember Adlai Stevenson.
That could be, which is a shame because he was fantastic. No, I am older than you because I actually did some campaigning in New York for the Reform Democrats, and I have a photograph of Eleanor Roosevelt doing that with me.
Well, just having a photograph of Eleanor Roosevelt is pretty cool. We could do a whole talk about that. But I think we're going to talk about extended reality and virtual reality. And
I'm mentioning that for a reason, because I will be talking about why extended reality extends to all these things that we're seeing now in Ukraine and elsewhere. In American politics, it's really part of the same thing. So I just wanted to mention that, and it's not irrelevant. It is very relevant.
Well,
Okay, so then after that, in college, I was an English and physics major. I went on to the University of Rochester, where I studied theoretical physics, and then went from there to Brandeis, where I got a PhD. All the time, I was very, very interested in movies and films and theater. When I was in college, I went to a lot of I was just at the right time to see the original Brecht. I saw the Blacks with the original cast. I studied with the director of
Blacks
that.
by Jean Genet. Let's get the credits in for those who don't know what you're talking about. Jean Genet's The Blacks, right?
Right, but all of the next generation of famous Black actors were in that. And someone just mentioned that he was studying at or he's working at the theater that the director of the Blacks founded. Can't think of his name right now. So anyway, I've loved theater, especially Shakespeare. I've always been interested since it started in interactive computing. As a graduate, when I was at the Institute for Advanced Studies, I worked on something that ended up in one of the early computing projects. I did some of the first films made from computers to illustrate the evolution of the nonlinear waves. And I made films for my students in physics, and more recently I been very interested in Shakespeare's sonnets, and have done a couple of plays in which I've taken the sonnets and made dramatic plays.
I think that's how we originally met you. I think you submitted your Shakespeare piece to our speed date, and then all of a sudden you became the guy that was the extended reality guy. It's like, how did that happen? Shakespeare to extended reality. That's a big leap.
It's not. That's the point. That's the reason I'm an eclecticist, and I was an English major and a physics major. I actually almost studied with I'm not so good at names anymore. I almost went to the University of Toronto to study English literature instead of going to physics and doing that. And I was a backer of the Kickstarter for the Oculus Rift, and that's when I got really deeply involved in interactive video and virtual reality.
Well, I want to start very simple. I want to start with the word virtual, because I think there might be some confusion about the word virtual as it applies to what you're talking about. Can you explain that to us? If I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
I can tell you right now, but I'm going to come back to that as an integral part of what I will be talking about. Virtual reality is basically when you put on a helmet, you put it on, and you can see nothing but the artificial world that your computer is creating for you. That's what's called virtual reality.
And because it's a virtual medium, so it's a first cousin of what a lot of us are doing by producing things virtually on platforms like Zoom and other platforms. But it's not the same thing, correct?
Well, virtual is being used loosely as a way that it's not in IRL, in real life. So on Zoom, you're communicating remotely. So they're using the word virtual.
Right. So where do you want to start? Because I know you have a long tail of the development of virtual reality and extended reality.
Let me share my screen, and then I will give you a hopefully organized talk that goes through a lot of the things that people can do with virtual reality, and what theater people can do for virtual reality. And okay, so what I'm going to do is try and inspire everybody. The thing that I want to warn you about is not to think of extended reality as limitations. The trouble with your question, Bob, about what is virtual reality is that it doesn't matter.
I just wanted people to understand that how to use the word virtual in respect to what you're talking about.
The problem is that everybody uses these things in different ways, and we're going to talk about what the underlying properties are, and not so much about what and how different people use the words in different ways. So extended reality is a lot of different things, and you pick and choose what you want and you call it what you want. We're going to make new things. We're going to make old things better. Whoops, let's see. How do we do this? Okay, I'm going to start with spoilers. I'm going to tell you everything I'm going to say right at the beginning. LPXR, or live performance in extended reality, is important for play development. It can be used to create new kinds of theater. It can be used for testing. It can be used for rehearsals. WebXR, that can be used for promotion, discovery, and play development. It can be used for live performance in XR. All the things in red I'm going to explain in detail as I go on. But what I'm telling you now is what all these different things can do for you in different ways.
And I think that's a good way to start, Eric. I just want to just say that that's you need to. There's some people that don't understand everything, so laying it out for them is good.
Thank you. NFTs, we're going to talk about why they're important for financing, even for ticketing. So they're going to be valuable to producers, especially.
What does NFT stand for? What does NFT stand for?
We'll get to that. They're called non-fungible tokens.
Thank you.
Till I explain what non-fungible tokens are, that doesn't mean anything more than NFTs.
Trust me, Eric. When I ask questions, it's because I want people to be able to follow what you're saying. You don't have to fight me on it.
No, I'm not fighting you. I'm telling you. I'm trying to explain that how much more I have to say about that to make it clear. Xerography, what xerography is any kind of photography or videography that is more than just standard videography. It uses XR. The Metaverse, which we're going to talk about why it's a terrible name for it, is important for distribution, promotion, live performance. Generally speaking, extended reality will help theater engage new young audiences. It allows you to extend your geographical distribution. This is why I started talking about politics. It will introduce new topics, issues, and new ways that things must be addressed. And that's why it's so important that theater people get involved in this. There are a lot of new opportunities, both in theater and outside of theater, in extended reality for theatrical creators. One reason is that when you have something that is this new, the unions hate it, which means that new people that aren't in unions have a huge opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity for diversity too, because we're all starting fresh. So since this is so new, anybody that wants to get into it should not feel inhibited by the establishment. If they get started in this right away, they are the establishment. And so it's a wonderful opportunity to address diversity. Here's why theater people are needed to do things for external reality. Those are the things that external reality might be able to do for you. We need good content. Extended reality content is mostly at its very beginning. Much of it is amateurish. And much of it is not well funded enough to be really, really good.
Okay, I have to stop you because I can't be the only person in the room who's completely confused. So okay. Let me just ask you: can you define XR for us? Just tell us what extended reality means.
Okay, I will skip then the rest of the spoilers and tell you what extended reality is.
Yeah, because I'm not able to follow. So I want to help. I want to help people, and I also don't want to talk down to people. So if other people are following, I apologize.
This is the article in QPORIT where I introduced extended reality. The first thing extended reality is, the first thing extended reality is it uses the R to mean reality. And it uses the X to mean any different kind of reality. X could be V for virtual reality. I'll tell you what that is in a minute. A for augmented reality, and M for mixed reality. And there are also a lot of other kinds of reality too. So that's the first way that XR means extended reality. But there's much more to it than that.
I'm with you so far. Yeah, I got it.
Okay.
That helps.
Let me just roughly define theater. Theater basically is live performances like music, dance, or acting a story out with a live audience in real time. In practice, it's a lot more than that. On Broadway, there's a stage and there are seats. In mime, you don't have words. In Greek theater, there were masks. There's location-specific theater, interactive theater, improv, puppets, all different kinds of theater. One of the things that extended reality is going to do is to introduce different ways that you can use that in Broadway theater and all different kinds of theater in which that becomes even more central. Theater is one of the oldest professions in human history, and extended reality is the next revolution. We'll still tell you what extended reality is, still a tease. Computing power is exponentially increasing. That means there's going to be as much change in the next 3 to 5 years as there's been in the last 50 years. Things are not just changing, they're changing faster and faster. But here's the reason why I'm here. Theater and extended reality are first cousins, and I'm going to explain that in a moment. Okay. To understand extended reality, you have to understand that there's an epistemology. It means something in terms of the theory of knowledge. It means has specific technologies which are important to it. It's important to the content that goes into what we're talking about. It's important with the issues too, and I will explain exactly why. Here's the epistemology. Once you understand the epistemology, you'll understand why extended reality is important to me. Humans are lucky. We have 5 regular senses: sight, sound, touch, and smell, taste. But there's more than those 5. There's balance, internal pain, temperature, hunger, love. We have an opposable thumb. We stand on the ground so that we don't have to dig through the earth to do things. We don't have to fly in the air. You have a pretty good brain. We have relatively long life. Those are all really make us lucky, but we're not perfect. There's violence. There's a lot of violence right now. There's prejudice. There's greed that's built in at birth almost, and in initial learning in many brains. Like, we don't have field, we're not sensitive, our senses aren't sensitive to the electric field. We can only see 3 colors or less, not 4 colors like some animals. We don't have sonar like bats. We don't have many legs. We can't run as fast as a cheetah. We don't have wings, we can't fly. So we were created with certain great qualities, and we don't have certain others. Okay, here's reality. There are 3 kinds of, there's the fundamental, the underlying reality. Humans do not have any knowledge of that. There is no creature on earth that understands the underlying reality. In a computer game, you can have a character in a computer game that knows about everything that everybody else is doing. Humans don't have that property. What we have is everyday reality, where actual world is what we know, what our brain can understand about what our senses tell us. Our senses can bring in other people's conversations and information and tutorials so that our brain allows us to get more information, but we are still limited by the brain and our senses. Here's what extended reality is. We still don't have any direct knowledge of fundamental things, but our reality is extended with the help of our tools. That includes computing tools. It includes a telescope to discover that we're not alone on Earth, that those spots in the sky are not holes in some blanket, that they're actually other worlds just like ours. Microscopes are a tool that allowed us to see things that are smaller. Computing tools allow us to do new kinds of computations and to build new kinds of tools and new kinds of machines. And with the help of our tools in communication of true information to the brain and our senses, we extend the reality that we have. So when I say extended reality, I don't mean any particular technology. I mean the way that our everyday reality can be extended by all the things that humans are capable of doing. The technology of extended reality includes anything that will extend our reality. Telescopes, for example, and eyeglasses. We have a different reality from a mole that is digging in the ground. A person who is blind, who is deaf and blind, sees the world in a somewhat different way than someone that has acute vision. I saw the world completely differently when I got my first pair of glasses. And that makes a difference.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
Based on your definition of extended reality, would you say that theater is a form of extended reality because it enables us to see cultures and experiences beyond the ones that we experience ourselves every day?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So,
That's
you
one
would,
of the
you would
ways.
define theater itself as extended reality.
It is one of the contributors to our extended reality, or a possible contributor.
Okay.
So is all fiction. All of fiction tells us the things that we want to know about what could be happening, or making even explanation of why things are happening. And that's to be distinguished from fraud, which is a deliberate attempt to tell us things that are not true. When you tell us things that are not true, you're distorting our reality. That is the opposite of extending our reality. Putin is an enemy of extended reality. Trump and his allies who are lying to us are an opponent of extended reality. Theater is a great.
So extended reality needs to be, there needs to be truth in it. We need to be learning something true and genuine.
Truth is the way that our extended reality is extended, because the only thing we know is what our brain tells us and what our senses tell us. And our senses get information by what we see directly and indirectly from what other people know and tell us, and that we can understand because it's true. If they tell us things that are false, it distorts our reality.
Okay, so I want to pause for 1 second. I just want to say to everybody in the room, find your reactions function and click hand raise if anything comes up that confuses you or that you want to have further discussion on. So you need to talk to us by doing a virtual hand raise, if at all possible, or you can put a question into the chat like Jordan Richards just did. Is there considered a version of imagined reality? Is theater considered a version of imagined reality?
It can be imagined, and it is imagined, and it does contribute to our reality. So yes.
Paul Smith, did you want to ask something?
Just a tiny point, Eric. Some would say that truth is not only a function of our brain activity, but also a function of our soul, if there is a soul, or else we don't get truths. We cannot just depend on neural activity to know what necessarily is right or wrong. That's all.
You want to respond to that?
We have no way, humans have no, okay, I'll get to that actually in a little while. I have a very specific point about that.
All right.
So when we're talking about the technology of extended reality, the first thing everybody thinks of is virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality. And also spatial audio, hearing things that make you think it's coming from a particular place in space. That's very important, and I'm going to talk about that a lot now, but I just want to point out that we're going to come back. There's a lot more, much more than just display in the technology of extended reality. So we're going to skip all those other things for a moment and concentrate on VR, AR, and MR. And here's the definitions. First of all, IRL stands for in real life. An HMD is what people use for a head-mounted display. It is, for example, one of these or one of the other kinds that I'm going to show you. Eyewear is a word I made up. It has a load of puns. I for yes and hooray and I because it's interactive and uses the internet. But eyewear and wear, W-E-A-R is something you wear, and W-A-R-E is like hardware or software or tool. So I built those all into one super punned word to mean smart wearable objects. It includes HMD's headwear, it includes regular eyeglasses, it includes earphones, it includes things that you would wear on your body and are interactive and have some kind of intelligence. But here's the one that you started out by asking me. What do VR, AR, and MR mean? By VR, people mean computer-generated visual and sound, and even haptics, that's feelings, in your HMD or in something you're wearing like gloves that give you that isolate you from the rest of the world, and everything you know is what you're getting from the computer. That's what people mean by virtual reality.
Okay.
Augmented reality and mixed reality, people sometimes confuse the words or change the words according to what they're interested in. Apple and Microsoft use them in opposite words. Apple uses augmented reality for everything. Microsoft uses mixed reality for everything. But generally speaking, AR means that the computer provides information, and when you use your phone and you take your phone out and you look at something, the camera sees something, and when you're looking at the screen, what it sees is a mixture of what the camera sees and what the computer generates for you. So that you see on your screen on an iPhone or an Android phone, you see a mixture of the real world and the digital world.
So I'm a little unsure right now. So are you talking about filters?
Yes, they're the same as filters. Filters are a simple version of that.
Okay. No, I'm not confused. You see how simple it is to unconfuse me?
Yes, no, that's why I wanted you to be the moderator, because you're the one that can spot when I say things that people aren't going to understand.
Yeah, I'm also waiting. I'm trying to check the chat to make sure that everybody's following. My concern is that the people that aren't following are going to be hesitant to say I'm not following, and I really want to encourage everybody to really let this be a conversation. We want to know if there's anything you want to know or anything that you are not understanding. So please interact with us. Okay, that's it. That's my little thing to the room. I'm back.
I do know that some of the things that I'm saying are a tease for things that I'm going to explain clearly later and can't really explain without some prerequisites. So, but do tell me when you don't understand something. I'll at least tell you that I'm planning to explain it.
Okay, it might be the way my brain works. My brain functions in a way so that if I have the basic terminology to start the conversation, then I'm much more able to follow the conversation as it uses the terminology rather than I think what you're doing, you were trying to do teasers, like, tease us into thinking, what is this? What is this? What is this? And I was kind of at the beginning going, no, I want to know what it is now, and then follow your conversation more clearly. So that's just me.
Okay.
And I hear somebody saying they're following so far and enjoying the clarifications. And T-Cat says that she's following. So everybody's with you.
Okay, great. MR. MR is when the computer mixes generated information with what your head-mounted display or your eyewear shows. So that, for example, I could be using glasses that look like this. I'll show you a picture of some later in a minute or two. You'll be using glasses like this. I see the real world around me, but in my glasses are digital images that make everything look as if the generated images are actually in the space that I'm looking at. So when you wear them, it looks like you are in a world which is mixed with creatures that are created by the computer and creatures that are actually in the real world. So it's the same thing as augmented reality, except that instead of using a handphone and seeing things on the screen, what you're doing is seeing it as if it was really there in the real world. That's mixed reality.
Karen wants to know, is this mapping? Is this what you call mapping? Or is it different?
You could call it mapping. I don't know what she means by mapping, but you could call it mapping the digital world into the real world. You could call it that.
Okay. Karen, give us a thumbs up if that is what you meant. We'll see. No, it's okay.
No, just going over it again. Virtual reality, the computer generates everything you see, hear, and feel. That's called haptics. Augmented reality is when the phone's camera, which is generally connected remotely to a great big computer, it understands what you're seeing and provides information to you or generated images that are merged with what you see on your phone. And mixed reality is when the glasses that you're wearing, which again are connected to a big computer, it knows what you're seeing, and images that it creates are seamlessly integrated into the real world, or mapped into the real world, if you like, so that they're part of the scene. The current estimates is that there are more than 5 million active VR users, mostly on the MetaQuest 2. That's this guy. But an important thing is that more headsets are expected in 22, this year. Sony is expected to release one with that will work specifically with their PlayStation 5, and the specs for it are terrific. The first version of the Sony headset was terrible, and yet it was, at the time, it sold millions of copies. So will not be surprising for the number of active virtual reality users to double or triple every year in the next couple of years. We're going to have a lot of users. There have been big advances in mixed reality, but mixed reality headsets are more expensive and they're more for industry. So for theater, at least for theater that interacts with consumers, it's the virtual reality that is more important than mixed reality, because mixed reality will be too expensive for consumers for several years. Apple is expected to come out with a new device which will spark interest in it, but in augmented or mixed reality, but that's also expected to be a $2,000 product, whereas this is a $300 product. So it's almost 10 times as expensive. So 10 times means a couple of doublings. A doubling is 2 or 3 years. So it may be 10 years before you get really, really good mixed reality other than simple filters. And I'll show you some in a moment.
Question to you, and how long will it be before I can actually ask you about applications of this for theater?
I'm going to get to that.
Okay,
I'm going to start getting to that.
Okay.
But in order to understand what kind of an application is, you have to know what the number of objects is and what they are. Yeah. What?
Tina wants to know, where do holograms fit into all of this?
Holograms are when you put an image of a person. I'm going to show you exactly, but a hologram is basically a volumetric image. Usually a camera shows you what's in front of the lens. A virtual reality camera can show you everything that's around you. But if you want to know what somebody is entirely, then you have to have a camera which goes around you and looks at you. So a holographic image, okay, it's a little difficult. A holographic image, as the term is usually used, is a three-dimensional representation of somebody, basically that's done in a photo studio, where the camera takes pictures of you all around and makes a copy of what you do in there, and it takes that copy and puts it somewhere else into a mixed reality setting. Holography, though, is something completely different. It does the same thing, not as well in a technical way, but when people use the term hologram, they usually mean something that looks like what you would see in Star Trek, where a person is seen in a different place from where he really is.
Basically, help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my only hope.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
That's a hologram.
Okay.
It's not a real hologram, but that's what people are calling a hologram. I'm going to tell you what Shakespeare says about that in a moment.
All right.
This is just an illustration of how fast virtual reality is changing. When the first version of the Oculus development kit came out in 2013, which is 9 years ago, it had only 500,000 pixels per eye. That is the little dots that the picture is represented in. Pimax now has more than 8 million pixels per eye. And that means that the number of pixels in here 8 years has doubled about 5 times. So the quality of these things are doubling every 2 or 3 years. And that's how you can predict when things that you want that aren't there yet will be there. 8 million pixels per eye is pretty much a really clear picture. Maybe 16 pixels, maybe one more doubling, 16 pixels at a cost of $300 or $200 makes this a mass producible object. So to get real mass produced virtual reality is about 2 more years.
Okay, so we have a couple comments. Paul wants to know, have you explored using optical phase conjugation to create virtual reality? And if you have, can you explain to the rest of us what that means?
It's much too complicated to explain now. I haven't used it. People are experimenting with that, and that may be the way that they do it soon, but that would be too much off topic to discuss in detail.
And you are promising that at some point we're going to talk about the applications for theater. I mean, right now I've actually, I've put on the Oculus. I've experienced some of this. I always, my simple-minded view of a lot of this is it's a 360-degree photograph, so I'm seeing things all around me. It's not just what's in front of me. It's to my left, to my right, behind me. The Oculus allows us to see this complete dimension. And this complete reality, and it's kind of fun, and it's kind of a game, and it's kind of an entertainment form of its own. And I think what we're going to eventually want to talk about is how this would apply to our theater thinking, how this could embellish and augment our thinking about theater. So
absolutely.
I know we're going to get there, right?
We're going to get there. We have to know what we're talking about so that when we talk about that. Just like at the beginning, I talked about the things that it could do, and you didn't know what I was talking about because you didn't know what all those things in red actually were. So now I'm telling you about all the things in red, what they are, and then I'll be able to explain how they actually do the things that they said at the beginning that they could do. That's my strategy.
Okay.
Okay, so let's see, where were we? This is what a VR headset looks like now, but they're going to look more like this in the future. So what we're talking about now is how we're going to make this a consumer object that will be much more useful for a target and for things that people want to do. So these are 2 of the new headsets. They use filters. So these are more the beginning of the use of augmented or mixed reality, and the future of virtual reality in terms of cheap, comfortable, good-looking headsets. One of the reasons why good-looking headsets are important is because if someone is wearing a headset when trying to communicate in virtual reality, you want to look at them, you want to see their eyes, and you want to see what they're looking at as a person or a hologram instead of as an avatar. We'll talk about what avatars are in a moment. And here is the fundamental reason why one of the fundamental reasons why extended reality and theater are so closely entwined and so important to each other. Two of the things about extended reality or virtual reality that are so important is the presence. It feels like you're in the presence of feels like you are in the real physical presence of whatever is in the field of view of your headset. And immersion, it feels like you're completely immersed in the space that's presented to you. Now, the ability to do that depends on the quality of the hardware. It has to run fast. It has to be clear, the images. They have to be high resolution. That's why it's taken time before we get to the point where they're really a consumer product.
I want to stop you to get a question. Will there be time at the end of your presentation for us to just have conversation and talk about this?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Presence and immersion in extended reality are the first cousins to a live audience watching a live performance in theater. So this makes it remote. It can make it virtual, but it's a first, as opposed to film or Zoom like we're doing now. I'm not a little frame in the middle of your screen. As you were just saying, Bob, it is the full room. It is three-dimensional. It really feels like you're there. I'll give you two little stories. If somebody looks you in the eye in virtual reality, there is an instant connection. That's one story. I was doing a test for someone who had this crude kitchen in which you were frying burgers. And to do that, I was using this controller, which was transformed in the image as my hands, or sometimes it was my hands and sometimes it was my spatula. So when I was finished, I put the spatula down on the table in the virtual reality. And of course it fell to the floor because there was no table there. But it was such a real experience that I was able to try to put my spatula down, my imaginary spatula down on the imaginary table and think I was done. And crash.
Mike Meth makes the observation, which I think is worth mentioning, which is that the great thing that extended reality does that's better than theater is that you have the best seat. You actually are watching a performance or watching whatever the experience is around you, and it is directed really at you. So you're in house seats, as he put it.
That's correct. That's one of the things I said. That is an option. There are a lot of people. It is what one should do is realize how many different options there are. I've had people who argue that virtual reality isn't good because you don't know what to do with all this space. Well, if you don't know what to do with all the space, you don't need it, or you use it for something else. These are what extended reality does, is give you possibilities. One of the possibilities is exactly what he said, which is putting everybody in front row center when they're seeing a show. Here's the other reason why virtual reality is so important. Mainstream cinema is built on the edit and the cut and the detail, like we are here, and it's framed. But XR, like theater, is built in this complete space, immersed in a full panoramic experience, and you feel like you're in the presence of the performers. That's why theater and virtual reality are so much more closely aligned than theater and film. Virtual reality can do everything that film can do and more, but it's much more closely aligned to theater. Now, let me talk about some of the other things that are in extended reality technology, just so that we know what they are. We have the sensing tools like cameras, all the computing like AI, artificial intelligence, and the blockchain. The blockchain we're going to talk about in a minute, that the blockchain supports cryptocurrencies, which support NFTs, which we will just talk about in a minute. The network is the 5G, which is, and 6G and 7G, the generation of technology and the networking, and the better networking you have, the better you can do any kind of remote connections. Hybrid that uses all of these different technologies includes theater and film. Education is very important, and theater people are very important to XR and education. A lot of other things, including NFTs, the Metaverse, and WebXR that we're about to talk about. And we're going to talk about specifically how each of those things can be important to theater. You can think of extended reality in the technology as being a worldwide, totally integrated computer. That is, it has a display, it has sensing, it has computing, a network. Those are all things that you find in computers. That is how a computer is built. That's the architecture of a computer. So in a sense, the technology of extended reality is the architecture of a worldwide computer.
Does anybody have any questions about that so far? I have to admit that I don't completely understand it, so it's just out of my league. Anyone? Okay.
That's a throwaway thought.
Tita says, I get the visual experience and sound. What about connection with audience? If it's not part of extended reality, then is the real relationship of XR with film more than live theater? I'm not sure what the question is. Do you understand what you're saying?
Well, the connection between people in virtual reality using extended reality or virtual reality is a different way of communicating between the audience and the people on theater. It's a little different. It's better than some. If you like live theater and you want to be there and smell the actors and have them spit on you in the front row, it is not as good. You right now it does not include the spitting of the disclaimers on stage into the first row seats.
But we could certainly incorporate Santorama into it, if you remember Santorama from the 60s.
Yeah.
I want to just say something a little bit practical. You were a guest for us many years ago, 4, 5, 6, I don't know how long ago it was, and you actually asked to photograph the whole thing in VR and virtual reality, and you brought a camera in. So for those of the people in the room who don't even understand this, there's a 360-degree camera that exists that you bring in. It's probably more sophisticated now than the one they used back then, but you place it. I guess the director of the play needs to know where the placement of it's going to be and how and what the relative relationship is going to be between the camera and the various actions that are happening. So this all has to be planned and thought through, right? It's like directing a film.
It is like directing a film. It is similar but different because you have more options, basically. And there are different things that are really good, and there are different things that are not quite as good. I mean, you don't have. Well, yeah, it is. I'm not talking here about xerography. The subject of how you would use a cameras to photograph to make a virtual copy. The question of how you would use extended reality to digitally capture a show is something that requires an entire seminar or two of its own, because there are so many different details. But yes, you would use one or more cameras. I'm going to show you some examples in a minute of one of the ways that it was done.
Okay. TCAT says, the people connection may be good in extended reality and realistic, but this technology must still be edited and camera dependent. Is that correct?
There's a lot of different kinds of editing that you may have to do, or you may be able to avoid, depending on what your project is and where you want it to go. That's very specific to exactly what you want to do, how much or whether you need editing.
Okay. So Karen thinks I'm terrified. I'm not terrified, Karen. Basically, I'm just trying to make sure that if I'm following it, if I'm not following it, I want to make sure that other people need clarifications as well. I just want to I'm using myself as the guideline for helping everybody else in the room who's not as well versed in it as you obviously are. There was another Carlton. No, Eric did not talk about pricing. I don't think he necessarily is selling the equipment. He was just basically talking about what the different options were and what the development of the equipment has been like over the last couple of years. Correct, Eric. Do you have a sense of what the pricing is for the glasses and the cameras?
What I said was that the Oculus Quest, which is the most popular device right now, sells for $299, and but equipment to do augmented reality, very crudely, is about $400 or $500, and to do it well is in the thousands.
And when you get the Oculus, obviously you're also buying content. The Oculus has to come with content. Does it come with content, or do you have to add on the content when you own an Oculus?
It comes with quite a bit of free content, but most games sell for $25 each.
Okay.
So you get enough content. I haven't really bought much content at all because everything I've done has been basically come with the camera. And they're doing more and more free things all the time, and they're doing more and more things you have to pay for all the time.
And Tita's now. Tita, can you turn your mic on and because I'm not sure how to ask your questions. What is it you're trying to find out? I want you to ask Eric if possible.
I think my question is so basic. I need a picture of what we're talking about. Is everybody sitting in a theater with a headset on and somehow integrating a theatrical stage and everybody's communal giggles or gasps? Or are we talking about somebody anywhere with their headset, nobody else around, and getting a theatrical experience? And then that's a little bit more like film to me.
That's actually a very.
I think the answer is yes. In other words, you can probably, I think if I understood your question, you can do either. You have to set them up in slightly different ways, but you can do either.
In other words, can you broadcast simultaneously to 20 or 40 or 30 or 50 people in a theater so that they're all seeing the same thing at the same time?
Yes.
Okay, so then what we're having is the theater experience, which a lot of us believe has to do with community. It's not just we're just not by ourselves looking at a show or looking at any kind of content we're talking about. We're actually with an audience, fellow human beings who are responding to the same information that we're responding to.
Yes, and the people, but the audience is almost certainly all avatars. The performers can be, if they're holograms, they can be live. They can be live together on stage, or they can be separated but placed together by the computer as holograms.
Eric, I think what Tita was suggesting, and I may be wrong, she was suggesting that we could have a theater experience if 20 of us went into a room and we're watching the same thing and we're all laughing at the same time and we're all being emotionally moved at the same time. I don't think she's talking about us being avatars. I was thinking she's talking about an actual audience experience.
You can do that too. If everybody is in the same room, there may not be any reason to put a headset on if you're doing virtual reality, unless the actors, if you could have the actors all separated and connected by the computer with the audience sitting together with their headsets on in order to see it. You need your headset on in order to see the digital objects. If you are not with someone else, then you need to be with them as either an avatar or a hologram.
So we have we have a lot of comments.
Okay, let me skip the section in which I tell you why it's so important for writers to get involved. The reason for writers to get involved is the ethical and political issues concerned with extended reality. One stop on the way. Let me mention the importance of truth. Facts are the things, back to epistemology. Facts are the things that actually happen. For evidence of what actually happens, you have to get the truth. It's all that you know about facts. Fiction explores what could happen or explains what happens. Fakes and fraud are the enemy of ethics and the enemy of understanding the facts. And you have to have what truth is the correct, accurate description of the evidence for the facts. In this understanding of epistemology, you have to have truth is a real thing. People don't know what the truth is. People can only do their best to say the truth or to try to determine what the truth, but the truth is the best evidence that people give as to what they know about the facts from their senses. But let me skip this whole section. And come back to the spoilers, and I'll talk about specifically WebXR, a little bit about xerography, and about what it's like to make pictures of to use virtual reality for pictures. But one of the points that I wanted to get across is that that's all there is.
Leslie Dan thinks that I'm interrupting you too much, so I'm interrupting you again, of course. But she says she would love to get examples. Do you have examples that you can show? And she also says that I'm making it hard for her to follow your narrative, and I apologize for that. I'm just trying to follow it myself. That's all.
Okay, so let's talk about the metaverse. The metaverse, there were several prototypes for what Zuckerberg called the metaverse. In 1982, there was a movie called Tron, in which they talked about people getting mixed into a video game. In 1985, there was something that was called The Habitat, which was kind of a computer game in which you lived in a certain world. In 1992, there was a movie called Lawnmower Man, which described really what virtual reality is today. And if you want to understand the beginnings of virtual reality, that's a good movie to see, The Lawnmower Man. It's on probably on Netflix. But the notion of the metaverse was introduced in the 1992 novel Snow Crash by Neil Stephenson. In this novel, the metaverse is a computer game that you enter and you play wearing a headset like the one I had, which has first of all, it was everywhere in the world. It was kind of a nasty game, but it also had the rather unpleasant property that somebody with something like a QR code could put it into your face while you're playing the game, and then you turn into a brain dead blob. So it was the actual metaverse, the actual prototype for the metaverse was a dystopian game in a dystopian universe which could destroy your brain. That's why I don't like the term metaverse very much. The Matrix gave an example of what they're trying to do. The movie Avatar gave an example of what Caprica, if you read the book Ready Player One, more than the movie, the book is a wonderful explanation of what kinds of things people are thinking of. And a very simple example is, if you see the movie Ralph Breaks the Internet, you'll see what we're talking about in terms of an internet world that you enter and you can do things within of all kinds. But the metaverse itself was, as I said, a dystopian game in a dystopian world. And for some reason, Zuckerberg thought that's great. I think that was a bad choice of words for him, given the history of his company. Although I will say two things. Zuckerberg has the best understanding of where the internet can go of anybody. The trouble is, hopefully he's only thinking about the ethical parts, which I just skipped, and not about how it can make money and do the same kind of trouble in the next generation of computing as the old generation did. So what people are now calling a metaverse is something that can do any of the following things. It can be a social media site like Horizon Worlds, that's in Meta. It can be many independent worlds like VR Chat and AllSpace. Gameplay like Roblox, user-created content like Roblox and Horizon Worlds. You can do digital commerce in it. That's why NFTs and cryptocurrency are important. Somnium is an example. They're actually selling for millions of dollars real estate in a virtual world. And there are events like in Fortnite where you had a concert in Fortnite where people attended as avatars, watched real performers, and it was a huge, huge event, made a lot of money. But the word metaverse is branding. Here's where Shakespeare comes in. He pointed out that, or a little 13-year-old girl pointed out actually, that a rose by any other name could smell as sweet. Here's the point. The rose is a name for something, but there is also the something which you are calling a name. What we're interested in is the something that people are calling a metaverse, but that something is being called a lot of different things by different people. Meta calls it a metaverse. HTC Vive calls it the Viveverse. Someone else, NVIDIA calls it the Omniverse. They're all talking about the same thing, which isn't defined yet. If you talk about the metaverse, or you talk about augmented or mixed reality without saying exactly which of the possible meanings you mean, then you're being confusing. You're talking about the thing that could be a rose, but could be used, so you could use some other name to talk about the same thing. Or you could use a rose to talk about something different. Metaverse is a nice word. We got to find something better. Okay, let's talk about avatars. Now we're getting to what people were asking about examples. An avatar can be abstract. It could be an animal, a monster, it could be a meme. It could be a person, like for which you choose your hair and your face and your clothing. It could look like a person, and you use a photograph or a 3D photograph or a photograph, a volumetric photograph where you photograph it from all sides so that the object looks realistic from any direction. It could be a skeleton that looks like a person that you control with a program. And it can be a hologram, which is you capture with volumetric live capture, and then you project into something else. I'll give you some examples of all of these. In Somnium, which is a social media space in 3D that you can view with a headset or without a headset, but it's only in 3D when you view it with a headset. It's on the web on somniumsomethingorother.com. I'm going to give Bob Ost, I'm going to give you, Bob, in a few days or a week or so, a collection of resources that will tell you a lot of different places that you can go to read about these things, or on the internet, or better yet, in a headset, you can actually go to experience them. But this is Somnium. These are what the avatars look like in Somnium. So they can wander around and go to different places. They can communicate with each other as avatars. This is what it looks like if you create. These are our artificial heads. This is what you can create with cameras plus computer programming and AI. You can create creatures that look incredibly realistic. In fact, there is a study that showed that people are more likely to believe things that one of these digital humans say more than they believe something that a real human says. we've all experienced that. If you've ever been in a car driving with, which has GPS in it, and you know the right way to go, and the GPS is saying go a different way, you can have an argument with somebody about who to believe, you or the GPS system. It's the same thing.
Eric, about how much more time do you have? Because normally we would be ending at 5:30, at 6:30.
Yeah, I will skip some more stuff and try to get.
Well, I don't want to. I don't want you to skip the stuff that people want to see. I've been criticized.
Let me show you the next section, which is all the pictures that people wanted to see.
Okay.
This is the way you would photograph something to make a complete hologram. This is the high end. You have a green screen that's circular, and inside the green screen you have people that are doing something. You photograph them from all directions, and then you can use your computer to put the picture into something that somebody would be seeing in his headset. This man was photographed in the same, like this, as if he were one of these people. This is actually what you would see on the screen if you were looking at the screen. This man has been projected. The camera is focused on the keyboard, like the keyboard of my computer. And the man is integrated into the picture. So the man was photographed in a studio like the one I just saw, composited in a computer so that on the screen of a phone, when you look with your cell phone at your desk, you see him walking in front of your keyboard. Meta has sponsored a production of The Tempest, a little segment of it, in a show that looks like this in your headset. So this is a live actor being represented by an avatar, and he is talking with characters who are live in their headsets. They're all composited together in the social space, and he is telling the story of his experience in The Tempest and helping these people to interact with him in telling the story. If anybody remembers something like playing with reality, that was a live experience with a live character. A live person in the audience would join the three actors, or would join a troupe of actors and participate in an improvised short play. And this is essentially the same thing in virtual reality with everybody there as avatars. This is another show that was done in virtual reality. This is what we call LPXR. This is live performance in XR. This is only one of the ways that extended reality and theater can interact. But this is the live performance in XR. These people are all live in different locations around the world and being represented as avatars. And this is one scene from the play. One shot from the play.
I'm gonna have to we're gonna have to stop in like a couple of minutes. I mean, only because I know people are not expecting to be here this long, and we usually do breakout rooms, and you're usually the king of one of the breakout rooms where everybody can come and talk to you and ask you questions. So
let me just quickly go through my slides and come to a conclusion.
Okay.
Okay. So here's another case where these are avatars. These avatars are skeletons that are programmed. They're programmed. These are the three characters that are the dancers. They're photographed, and their dance is used to project and create the movement of the things that you see as avatars. And the audience is actually avatars also, and can walk around in the space to see the dance that they're doing. So for live theater and virtual reality, you can project to a global audience. You can do live or time shifted distribution. You can maintain an immersion and presence. You can use this for rehearsals. You can use it for previews. You can use it for demos as well as for shows. It's a tool. It's not a replacement of theater or a different kind of theater only. It's also a tool. All of these things that I'm talking about and the ones that I skipped are all tools that theater people can use. I encourage you to experience it. A Quest is under $300. These are some of the things I talked about. I didn't talk about why NFTs are important to producers for financing and ticketing. I didn't talk about WebXR, which is incredibly important for all aspects of theater development. There are new topics and issues that we need theater people to help create the content and to use their expertise using XR to help the world be better.
So Eric, I would like to suggest that we're going to have to do another session and start it where we're stopping, which is basically what a lot of people wanted to talk about today, which is the applications of this for theater, and how do I as a writer, or how do we as writers use this form for our narratives? Does it work for narratives? Is it something that really is a tool, or is it something that is an alternative rather than a tool?
It's not an alternative.
Okay.
It is a tool as a tool it includes options for live performance, and it includes tools for ordinary performance.
Well, we're not able to talk about content, which is fine. That can be another conversation. It's basically, I think it would be an interesting, creative conversation with writers and other people to talk about how content can be enhanced, or when content would be appropriate for extended reality, and how our ideas and our thoughts and our themes can be enhanced by it. That seems to be another conversation that we could have another time. So are we close?
Yeah, I just want to mention that there are some examples of live performance in XR coming up. This one, by the way, is organized by Brendan, who came and gave a talk here at.
Yeah, Brendan. Actually, I was going to mention that last year in our benefit, one of the 6 pieces was called Virtual Happy Hour, and Brendan was involved in creating an avatar. We had an interaction between live characters and avatars within our own benefits. So we've actually used some of these techniques, and very successfully. It was a terrific piece, and sometime I could show that to people as an example of how to use extended reality.
So Brendan is doing that. Horizon Worlds is doing something, and Apple sooner or later is going to come out with some kind of AR device, which is going to completely boost the entire industry. That's why one has to understand what's coming in order to be able to take advantage of it when it suddenly explodes. So I just hope that I help to inspire people to learn more. Many of these topics are complicated and need a lot of discussion to actually implement. But
so why do you close down this share, come back on as you, and maybe we can bring some people in, and we can ask you questions and talk a little. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thanks for people who came from Story Code and Story Forward. Some people I invited, and hopefully some of them joined True. I think at least one of them just said they did. Maybe both of them, 2 of them. Thank you all for listening.
Okay, so give us back the screen so we can see you.
Oh. Share. How do I unshare?
Oh dear.
Sharing, new share. I have new share.
There it is. I'm taking it off. There you go.
Oh, there you are.
I undid it for
Got
you.
me.
Okay, so everybody come onto the room and say hi. And I want to basically say a few little words, a few closing words. Eric, thank you very much for your presentation. For those of you who are frustrated with me for asking questions, it's just because this is the format we've been doing for 94 weeks. I usually have conversations with people. It's unusual that I would give over the screen for somebody to do a presentation. My only purpose in interrupting Eric, just so everybody understands this, is because I figured if I wasn't completely understanding it, there must have been somebody else in the room who wasn't completely understanding it either, and I was trying to get more information for you. I apologize.
Well, thank you, Bob, for clarifying and stopping me whenever I got too far ahead of my skis.
Well, I didn't please everybody by doing that, so that's it is what it is. YouTube viewers, hope this was of interest to you, and I hope you'll come join us in True on Fridays at 5 o'clock. You're all welcome to come. Next week, I'm trying to remember what my topic is next week. Oh, next week we're actually going to be talking about touring. I have a company coming, Mid-Atlantic Arts, that gives major grants so that actors and performers can take their work internationally. They support the international performance of your work. So they help you with touring. We're going to talk about touring. And in addition to Robin Bush from Mid-Atlantic, I'm going to have Valerie David and Heather Massey, both of whom do one-person shows that do tour and have toured successfully for many years. So YouTube viewers, thank you for being with us. All of you, if you haven't donated to True, consider it, because your donations are what keeps us going. Otherwise, we're always happy to have you for free if that's the price that you can pay in our pay what you can. Free does come under that heading, and I'd like you to all to consider giving a donation at TrueDonate, TrueDonate.com. And if you don't feel like donating today, then consider coming to our benefit on March 20th and buy a ticket and be part of our annual effort to enlighten people with interesting and provocative plays and make you aware of what True does, who we are, and how we can also help you. So that's it. And subscribe to YouTube.
Bob,
we get perks if you subscribe.
I'm going to put some contact information in the chat, so please don't cut off the chat before people have a chance to copy it.
Oh, I don't cut off the chat. I just let this whole thing run. I'm going to go cook dinner, and you guys are going to be talking.